This
Hi
conference will
everyone.
now be
How are you?
recorded.
Sorry for all of the issues. Can you guys hear me? Because I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, it's definitely feedback.
Okay, Z, what do we do about the feedback?
That's better.
Does that clear it up?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm Stacey Ware, and I'm going to be talking about the roles of an administrator in an ICF IID facility. Do we have anyone here that is currently working in that area?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Miss Julie?
Yes, I work at the Center of Family Love.
Awesome. Okay, and Okarchi.
Yes.
Okay, great. So
I am as
basically,
well. Cindy Stone from McCall's Chapel.
okay, great, awesome. So
I am as
you guys
well.
are already familiar
Sydney
with.
Kimball from Bartlesville.
Okay, great. So you guys are pretty much familiar with the expectations. So basically, I'm going to be talking about the difference between an administrator in an ICF, an administrator in the nursing home, and then we'll also talk about some other roles.
I'm going to close this.
Say what?
Thought I was just talking.
G, did you just say something?
He was closing the door.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'm trying to go to the next slide. This is like acting up. It's so small. So our objectives today will be to differentiate between the roles of the administrator in an immediate care facility versus a nursing home, and then we'll also look at the difference between the roles of an administrator and a QIDP, which is equivalent to a case manager in a nursing home setting. And I apologize for my voice. I have allergies really bad, and it's catching up with me today. Okay, so basically I've included the requirements. I'm trying to move the screen over here so I can see all of it. Is there a way to minimize that? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the administrator is responsible for the total operation of the facility. Now, in some cases, you will find that if you're in a large company, you may also have a CEO or an executive director that is over the entire company, but you're just an entity. So basically, that administrator is assigned over that program. So you are responsible for the policies, the licensure, surveys, all of that. You're in charge of the residents, the staff, everything. So that's pretty much the same as what you would see in a nursing home. The only difference is in a nursing home, that administrator is the top. It's the head person. They may have a vice president, president of an organization that oversees them, but for the most part, they have the say of what goes on in that nursing home. And in some cases, like for us, we have to answer to someone else in most cases. Okay, so the administrator shall also work hand in hand with the governing body, your board of directors, because they need to know what's going on. Whenever you do your licensure paperwork, especially when you do it for the healthcare authority, you have to list who your board members are. So in the event that there is an issue, say your facility gets immediate jeopardy or you get put on vendor hold, they will send information to the board of directors to alert them, because in a nursing home setting, in most cases, that board of directors or president may actually be the owner. So in that case, the owner needs to be aware of what's taking place in their facility. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. And does everyone have the slides? I think Z sent them out yesterday. So does everybody have them? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, so the administrator works closely with the governing body Policy reviews. How often should your policies be reviewed? Anybody want to answer that for me? How often should they be reviewed?
Annually?
Annually and as needed. So right now, the biggest thing that we are facing with nursing homes and intermediate care facilities, adjusting our policies to accommodate what we're doing with COVID-19. So you review them annually, but also on an as-needed basis for situations like this. Okay, you work in conjunction with accounting, also to ensure that you have accurate information for your cost report. You should not have anyone or anything going on in your facility that you are not aware of. So any money going out, coming in, you need to be aware of, and also have some checks and balances in place. In some cases, the person that audits your financials should not be the same person that's signing off on things, because that's a conflict of interest. So they should have some checks and balances in place so that you're not worried about someone embezzling or mishandling funds. The facility remains in good repair. That's going to be responsibility of the administrator and the governing body. Because again, if it's not in good repair, that means money has to be spent. And in some cases, your board of directors may limit, like if it's over $10,000 or $15,000, you may get approval from them before you can actually do that. Now, I have myself personally ran into situations where an owner did not want to make the necessary modifications that were needed. And it took the survey team coming in and writing that facility up in order for him to spend the money to make the necessary repair. So basically, as an administrator, I mean, you need to document everything that you've done to get these repairs completed, because if the owner does not want to do them, that responsibility still falls on you. And also you have to look at the fact, is the repair a health and safety issue? Is it something that could be detrimental to your staff or to the people that you care for? Okay, the facility has a means, which is financiers, to provide necessary items to the resident. In ICF and nursing home, we are responsible for providing their basic needs: shampoo, body wash, nail care items, just different things like that. We are responsible for providing those. So in my case, in the ICF, say we buy a body wash that is also a shampoo, and the resident wants Swab, or I don't even know some of the products, Paul Mitchell, and your facility cannot afford to purchase those items. So in this case, you have to look at, can this person purchase those items themselves? Because we just provide the standard, not the name brand. Also, you're going to work hand in hand with the director of nursing. That is so important, because if you're not out and about, which is the next one, lead by walking around, getting to know your employees, but also making sure whoever your director of nursing is, that they are on top of things. I alert my staff when I'm working in facilities that basically, if you have a concern about a resident that you're caring for and you reported it to the nurse and nothing has happened, it's your job to go a step higher, because you don't want something happening to that person and the nurse blew it off in some cases. So you want to, I guess, pretty much make your staff also accountable to notify you in these cases, so that we can work with the director of nursing and the nursing staff to make sure we're providing adequate care for the person that we're serving. Okay, the next slide. So here is the difference between the ICF and the nursing home. In the ICF case, we have smaller facilities. The administrator works with the nursing department that may be limited and not provided on a 24-hour basis. Whereas in a nursing home, you have a nurse on each shift. In our case, in our smaller homes, we do not. We have a nurse that is available, but not actually on the premises 24 hours. So in some cases, what we have to look at, if someone goes to the hospital, has a medical condition, and needs to have 24-hour nursing for their care, in this case, we have to do what's called a PASR, and a nurse from the DDSD program will come in and assess that person to see if they do need the 24-hour nursing. If so, then we start to look for nursing homes to send that person to. Now, on the flip side of that, say they had a stroke and they need rehab. They can go into a skilled nursing facility temporarily for their rehab and therapy, and then come back to the ICF if they don't need the 24-hour nursing care. Okay, the next one is the QIDP. That is the Qualified Intellectual Professional. Basically, that person is the caseworker or social worker that you guys would have in a nursing home setting. So they are responsible for everything regarding that resident. And they also have to work closely with the nursing, because if there is an issue, then basically they have to work together to inform the staff and service the staff on needs. Say, for example, I had a resident that recently came back from the hospital with a catheter because of his urinary issue. So the nurse had to come in and service all the staff on what to do, but then the QIDP had to go in and modify that person's plan to accommodate this particular need. So that's where those two work together. In a nursing home, basically your director of nursing is over your direct care, and in our case, our QIDP is. Also, our smaller facilities do not have a direct activities coordinator. We may have one overall, but for the most part of it, we allow our residents to decide where they want to go, what they want to do, and then they also are engaged in planning their monthly activities if they want to go to the movies or whatever. But right now, pretty much everything is on lockdown or on hold because of COVID. The activity director will also try to, in the nursing home setting, work with your clients to engage them in meaningful activities throughout the day. As the ICF, that's basically our staff that do that, along with the input from the residents. The next slide. Okay, in the ICF, we have W tags, and I think you have a handout that was attached to the email that Z sent you that pretty much sums up, it's like a one-sheet paper that has all the different tags on them for the ICF and for the nursing home. So basically, these are your tags that you use when you're being surveyed. The next one, in an ICF, we do not recognize MDSs. We are not able to bill Medicare for any funding, so basically that's a big difference, because nursing homes are able to recoup more money, whereas in our case, if we're a smaller facility, we get a higher per diem on the daily rate, but we don't have the excess coming in that the nursing homes are able to bill for. Also, in the ICF, we do have an ombudsman that will come periodically, not on a regular basis like they do in the nursing home. But then when they do come, they only visit the people that are 60 and over. Whereas in the nursing home, that's pretty much the age of everybody that resides there, so they pretty much see everybody. Also, in the ICF, we do not receive star ratings. So we do not, as far as the quality of care that is concerned, we do not have that component. Now, we have looked at trying to add something so that we could capture more funding, but at this time, we do not have that. Okay, some facts about the ICF. Oklahoma is one of the few states that recognizes their ICF facilities under the nursing home. And we used to be an entity under DHS, but basically when they had all the situation with the lawsuit from HISM, we got categorized under the umbrella of the nursing homes at that point. Now, Oklahoma does serve people with mental retardation in nursing homes, intermediate care facilities, and then also in residential homes in the community under DHS. And that program, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So that program is under DDSD, and that is the Developmental Disability Services Division. Now, other states have large public congregate living centers that are ran by the state. I know Arkansas, pretty much all of their facilities are ran by the state agencies. You have very few smaller facilities like Gateway and McCall's and different places like that, Center of Family Love. They don't really have very many. All of theirs are pretty much considered state agencies. So therefore, their employees are state employees, which is, I mean, good for the employees, but not so good for the residents. Now, I've had the opportunity to visit some of their facilities, and, I mean, you may have one big open room for 12 people. There is no division. I mean, they may have a curtain or something up or a divider in the room should someone need intimate care or something to that nature, but for the most part of it, you've got this big open room, kind of like a barrack, where these people sleep, and it's not personalized. And I know the last time I visited, they were actually in the process of trying to go to something more independent, more to the point that they were allowed to provide them with privacy and so forth. Oklahoma has recently closed North and Source, and those people were moved to the community setting. They still have the Greer Center, and it cares for people with disabilities from young age to like 21. And in some cases, depending on the situation, they may see other people that are older, but for the most part of it. And then the other facilities are privately owned. Okay, this is basically the PASSAR information. As I was saying earlier, if you have someone that goes into the hospital and when they return, they need to have 24-hour nursing, this is something that we have to go through as far as the PASSAR. So we do have the skilled nursing facility, the nursing facility, which is the nursing home, and then the intermediate care facility. Now, what you want to watch as far as in the nursing home setting, not just taking a person that has mental retardation or intellectual disability for the sake of filling a bed. You have to prove that that person needs 24-hour nursing. If not, the state will expect them to be in an intermediate care facility. Okay, I want to touch bases a little bit on incident reporting, and you have several handouts with different scenarios that I kind of want to go over with you. And there's several different ones, but there is one that is ICF malpractice. There's one for skilled and nursing facilities. And then there's just some other examples. So if you can pull those out, and I'm going to try to pull them up here for you as well. Let me see, how can I get, okay. Okay, Z, I did this before. I'm trying to get to my files. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Go back to that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to exit out of this for just a second. There we go. One here. For whatever reason, it's not wanting to open the other way that I did earlier, so. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we're at the ICF. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the ICF cell practice. So can I get someone to read that for me because I'm about to lose my voice here? Do I have any volunteers?
Sure. The facility failed to assure medical services were provided to a client with an emergency medical condition.
Okay, read the summary also, please.
Oh, sure. At 4:30 a.m. on such day, the nursing staff was notified that client number 1 had not slept during their shift and had 3 to 4 liquid stools that night. Nursing staff assessed the client, found his bed smeared with feces, color and consistency not described, his color slightly pale, abdomen slightly distended, and dried blood around his mouth. Assessed vital signs were blood pressure 100/60, heart rate 70 beats per minute, temperature 100.5 degrees Fahrenheit. His treatment consisted of Tylenol given orally at 5:10 a.m. At approximately 5:45 a.m., client 1 became unsteady while exiting the bathroom and was lowered to the floor with staff assistance. At 6 a.m., the client was described as skin cold, clammy, color pale. His blood pressure had dropped to 88/50, heart rate 85 beats per minute, and oxygen saturation 93%. The client was placed on oxygen at 5 liters per minute, and preparations were initiated to transfer the client to the infirmary. At 6:25 a.m., client 1 was still on the floor outside of the bathroom, and the records indicated he was unresponsive. His blood pressure was 80/50, and his heart rate dropped to 67 beats per minute. The client tried to remove the nasal cannula that supplied him with oxygen and insisted on sitting up. After sitting up, his skin was documented as decreased in color and sallow. He had coffee grounds drooling coming from both corners of his mouth. At 6:40 a.m., the community I was reading it off your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my bad. Hold up 1 second.
There you go.
Okay,
Real quick.
Sorry.
Where'd it go? Sallow, corner of his mouth. 6:40, 911 was called. At 6:45, client 1 was documented as being unresponsive and absent blood pressure, pulse, and respirations. CPR was initiated. At 6:49 a.m., the community 911 response team arrived and took over CPR. The client expired at 7 a.m. The superintendent stated that staff were expected to use their own judgment as to when to access 911 services. Review of facility procedure number X revealed a lack of clear guidelines to facility staff on when to call for community 911 emergency response.
Thank you so much. Okay. Hold up 1 second. Okay. So basically this actual scenario is one that has been pulled from a manual that is used to train surveyors. And so this is in the section of whether or not to determine if immediate jeopardy has taken place. So based on looking at the scenario, what is the main issue here? What's the major concern?
That they didn't call 911 in time.
Okay, they did not call 911 in time. Has actual harm occurred?
Yes.
Okay. So when should 911 have been called in this case? I'm sorry, I'm an interactive instructor, so I like a lot of feedback and interaction. I feel people learn that way best if they are able to interact.
I mean,
Maybe around 6 a.m.
Okay, around 6 a.m. Okay.
and earlier than that. I mean, when I think when they found out at 4:30 that he had all those problems, we would have sent him out for sure.
Yes. So basically at 4:30, when the nursing staff noticed the issues that the person was enduring as far as the liquid stools, because what we have to look at, what is the norm for that person? Now, if this person maybe was on a feeding tube and that was normal for that person, that's one thing. But if this is not the norm, that's your first red flag. And then they left him on the floor.
Yeah.
And the fact that the color, his color was like slightly pale. Again, these are things, dried blood. Dried blood should not be a factor in any situation that you would not call 911 unless it was like a nosebleed or a scratch. But to the what they described here is really serious, so they should have called earlier. So that was my whole point with the administrator being pretty much in contact with the director of nursing on a regular basis, because if they notified the director of nursing and they did not communicate to the administrator what was going on, basically the administrator cannot be at fault for something they were not aware of. But if you were aware of it and you went along with the director of nursing, then basically you both can be fined, a complaint can be filed against you, and so forth. Did a jeopardy actually occur? Yes, it did, because we did not act in a timely fashion. So me personally, I spend probably just as much time with my direct care and my nursing staff as I do anything else, because I want to know what's going on with each person that we serve. If there's an issue, I want to know the game plan. What are we going to do so that these things don't occur anymore? So we have to be in sync with the director of nursing, our nursing staff, and also the direct care staff. Anything else that stands out in this scenario to you? Nothing else?
Coffee grounds.
I'm sorry?
Coffee grounds.
Okay, the coffer ground, and what else?
And this,
Can
I
you
got a
come
problem
up
with
with
the
anything else?
staff.
Cannula.
Okay, I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
Removing the nasal cannula.
I got to get,
Okay. What do you think could have been done besides calling 911 ahead of time at 5:45 and 6:25? What else could have been done?
I would like to see the staff call some medical advice earlier instead of waiting for the superintendent to use their own judgment. They're not medical experts.
Exactly. And also, no one called the primary care physician to alert him or her what was going on in this situation. And in most cases, they will direct you, either take them immediately to the ER, but that's something that, as an administrator, you want to work closely with your direct care staff and your nursing so that they know, hey, this is a serious situation. We need to be calling the doctor. And they called the doctor at 4:30, 5:45, and the doctor directed them based on the information that was given. And you want to give detailed information so that they know exactly what state that person's in. And I'm so thankful now for the COVID, because we have the telehealth where you can go online and actually visit with that physician right there, and they can see the person the whole 9 yards. So in that case, that's something that could be done before we get to the point of having to take them to the emergency room. Okay, let's look at the next one. This is a skilled nursing facility and actual nursing home field practice. So can I get someone to read that one for me? You guys are being shy.
So I'll do it.
Thank you so much.
Severity, level 4, scope, isolated. The facility failed to prevent neglect, failed to provide appropriate emergency care, and failed to provide supervision to prevent accidents. Summary. The resident had a diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia with a history of falls and wandering. The resident ambulated with a special walker. The resident was found lying at the base of a flight of stairs in a pool of blood, bleeding from the nose and ears with a large laceration on his head. The alarm on the door leading to the stairs had not been reset after a fire alarm. Following the resident's fall down the flight of stairs, the nurse talked to the resident, helped him to his walker, asked an aide to take him back to his room. The resident was not transported to his room, but was requested to ambulate using his walker with the standby assistance of an aide. The nurse returned to the unit, completed pending tasks, and then called the doctor, who directed her to call an ambulance. The resident was taken to the hospital and returned to the facility after a decision not to perform neurosurgery. The resident died 36 hours after the injury. The resident fell while the nurse was off of the unit in the boarding home giving medication. This was a regular part of the assigned duties for the nurse.
Okay, so in this case, if you were a surveyor and you were looking at this incident report, would this be an immediate jeopardy?
I mean, I think so.
Yes.
Okay, exactly.
Yes.
There are so many different issues in this scenario. First of all, the biggest concern that I have is the fact that we actually had him to ambulate back to his room. But the true issue is the door alarm not being reset. So as an administrator, you would have to basically review all of the detailed information, because whenever you're doing something like this, you want to also have a protective and preventative measure in place to reduce something like this happening. What else can you guys think of from this scenario? That would be crucial. It would be crucial.
I'm sorry.
Well, I got concerned why they need to call 911 when they found him on the floor. Why I wouldn't take the chance of moving him to prevent further injuries, so they kept him still.
Yeah, you never move a person that's fallen and hit, and especially if they hit their head, because you don't know what neck or injuries they have sustained, so you do not move them. And the fact that they didn't even put them on something and move them to the bed, they had that person to walk.
And then the nurse that went back to her tasks before she called and then called the doctor.
Yes. So as your responsibility in this situation, just take this one. Your responsibility in this situation is to make sure that the cause of this person being injured has been addressed. So going back to, you've got maintenance, you've got housekeeping, you've got direct care staff. So in the event of a fire drill, you should probably have a check sheet or something, even to the point that people go back behind that person and double check to make sure those things are corrected or done. Because that's your main reason why the person fell down the flight of stairs, because the alarm was not reset. So apparently this person may have a history of wandering in the first place. So if that's the case, there should be something documented in their plan to reflect that. In some cases, you might even want to assign a staff to that person during an actual drill. Now, in most cases, do you guys have like housekeeping, maintenance, dietary staff? Whenever you're doing a drill, do they participate in the drills with your direct care staff?
Yeah, we do. Ours do.
Good. And it should be that way. And they should be able to understand and know. I mean, you don't want to give any too much detailed information, but they should be able to understand and know if this person has a history of wandering. And the fact that they also have Alzheimer's is another key factor. Sometimes we have to as far as showing them their space or their personal items, kind of just getting them back to that reality where they are, because sometimes they will think that that's not where they live or that's not their room. So we have to be cautious of those things and put plans in place to prevent those things from taking place, especially in the event of a fire drill or something of that nature. So put together a checklist. These are the things that we need to check during a fire drill, and then identify all your people that would be at risk during this time frame. And if they live in the same vicinity, you could have that aid assigned to them to assist them during that actual drill. Okay. Now, some other things that I've given you, and were you guys able to pull up your, I'm going to try to pull these up real quick for you. This is a list of the F tags. Okay, so as you can see at the very top here, you guys see that part? Anything that has an asterisk and is in red means substandard quality of care. One or more deficiencies within that level. So your red areas are very, very important, because if you get more than one deficiency in these particular areas, that can classify an IJ. Now, in most cases, if they review a document or something and they've only identified one person that has that, they're going to probably document it as a deficient practice, but it would not be an immediate jeopardy unless it was very severe. So if you'll just kind of familiarize yourself with the different tags. Again, the F tags are for the nursing homes and the W tags are for ICF. So basically looking at some of the red items: resident rights, reasonable accommodation of needs, having to be able to choose like who their roommate, different foods that they may like, self-determination, resident family, home-like environment. Going back to the resident family group, it's even to the point, like with the COVID and so forth that we're dealing with now, that you have to notify the family members that the person tested positive within a certain time frame, or that can be considered a deficient practice or an immediate jeopardy. Free from abuse and neglect, involuntary seclusion. What is involuntary seclusion? Who wants to answer that for me? Because that's very important. Going once, going twice.
Locking them in the rooms.
Okay. Does it have to be locked?
Or just
No, well,
their rooms.
Okay. So basically, you put a person in their room, say they utilize a wheelchair and they cannot move around, move about, and you just sit them in their room and there's no interaction for the rest of the shift. That can be considered seclusion, unless it's written in their person's plan that they prefer to be left alone, no one bothering them, and basically when staff can come in to provide care or to check on them. But I would still check on them periodically just to make sure they're okay and they don't have any further needs. But when you put a person in there, just forget about them and don't check on them. I mean, I've seen situations where a person was left on the toilet for hours, and we had to submit that into the state because that was neglect. You cannot leave a person on the toilet for hours. And this person is non-ambulatory, so they could not get themselves up and get back in their wheelchair. So they relied on the support and care of the staff, and that would be a failed practice. So some of the other ones here, suspicious of like a crime, and again, you're going to see that in some cases in our field and in the nursing home, because it may be a registered sex offender. So you should have policies that address that as well. And then you move over to the next section. You got quality of life, making sure foot care. How important is foot care? Do you guys have a plan to address foot care on a regular basis? I just met with my nursing staff this morning just to address foot care and making sure that staff are re-educated on the importance of foot care and that it's done on a regular basis. So very important. And then making sure in some cases your facility may have a podiatrist that comes out and takes care of that person's toenails. If not, then you want to make sure that you have something in place to address that. And then there is a second page here. Okay, let me move that out. Okay. Can't get the second page to come up. Come on. Okay, that is page. Okay, there we go. Here's page 2. Going over to the behavioral health services. And I know in a nursing home type setting, they're big now as far as the surveyors on the behavioral health services and making sure that we're not just putting people on unnecessary drugs. So say you have a person that is admitted into your nursing facility, and because they seem to be so depressed, when the physician comes in, you alert them that that person has been depressed since moving in and possibly needs to be on medication. But did you ever explore the fact that that person has lived in this house with their family for years, and having to be separated from all of that is overwhelming for that person? So they just isolated themselves for a period of time because no one has thought of other activities or different things to engage them into the nursing home setting, or even to kind of mingle with the other residents so that they have quality of life. So sometimes it's not the matter of the medication, it's exploring opportunities for this person that will be an example of what they were used to at home. It may be that you modify what time they eat breakfast and lunch to what they ate at home, or even the menu items, just to create a home-like atmosphere for them in the nursing home setting. So that's something that you want to kind of review before just putting them on medication, especially medication for behavioral. Now, in our case in the ICF, you're going to see a lot of psychotropic medication for the simple fact of some of our population having schizophrenia, aggressive behavior, explosive behaviors, intermittent explosive behaviors, and different things like that. So you're going to see medications for behaviors in that case. And what we have to do is submit any medication that that person takes that may alter their consciousness or their mental state. We have to send it to a committee, which is HRC, to review to make sure the plan accommodates that person, but also we've given them coping techniques that they can use so that eventually we're able to reduce that medication or wean them off of that medication. So medication may be temporary while we work on some different coping skills and get them implemented. Okay, we'll go back to this. Okay, on the next one, you also have some handouts in the information that I gave you that list the guidelines for determining what an immediate jeopardy is. And like I say, these are just examples that I pulled from the book that they use when they train the surveyor. First of all, whenever we look at an immediate jeopardy situation, we are looking to find out if actual harm occurred, or was there a potential for harm to be. And then they're going to look at the quantity. Is this happening to multiple people within that facility? And when, as an administrator, you have to act on like immediately. If you see something, visit with your director of nursing, see what their game plan is, and say, for example, like right now with COVID, some of our doctors are not seeing our patients or our residents, so we're having to use telehealth. But in most cases, that physician may even direct us to go to the emergency room or to our urgent care center. So we just want to make sure that those needs are being met. So familiarize yourself with those as well as the triggers. And the triggers just basically give you, it talks about the different failed practices. Let me see if I can pull that up for you as well. I don't want that yet. Okay, I'm right here. Okay. Okay, it's going to be on this one right here, and it's coming up. Okay, we don't want that one. Okay, it's not wanting to open. Come on. Okay. That's part of it. Okay, I pulled up the wrong one. I'll just go through this one real quick and show you what this is. This one, this right here is your survey report that you get. So whenever the surveyors come into your facility, they will give you this page, which will be blank, and basically you're filling out the name of the facility, the address, your Medicaid provider number, whoever your CEO is or executive director, telephone, Tulsa County Code is 72, basically the date the survey began, and then all these different questions that they ask. They want to know how many clients you have, and if you have a large area or multiple facilities, then you would also have to list that information. And then on the back, they want to know the age and sex of your residents, what type of disabilities they have, if they have autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and then over here, you've kind of got if they have a medical care plan, how many are on drugs to control behavior. We do no longer use physical restraints or timeout rooms. Also, we don't do any of this application of painful or noxious stimuli. We no longer do those. Anyone that attends off-campus day programs, we do have people that have jobs that work out in the community, so then we would list those. And generally, the surveyors would actually go out and visit a couple of those work sites. Okay, let's see, it's going to be over here. Okay, this is another handout that I gave Z.
I got a question.
Getting ready. Yes, go ahead.
You said that no physical restraints at all?
Mm-mm.
What happens if they're harming themselves?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you.
What happens if they're in harm of themselves or others?
You can use body positioning and things like that. And in an emergency case, say, for example, they're going to walk out in front of a speeding truck and you have to do some type of body positioning or wrapping your arms around them. But that's okay. But otherwise, we do not do any types of restraint. There used to be, when I first started in the field, we could give injections like Haldol or different things like that to calm them down immediately. We can no longer do those. And kind of like the straight jacket that you see in the movies, those are definitely a no-no. And your agency should have some type of behavioral program in place that teaches you how to handle certain behaviors. Say, for example, if they pull your hair, basically you would apply pressure to their hand to get them to loosen it up so that you can get your hair out or something to that degree. But it's not an actual takedown or restraint where they're tied down. Now, you will see that with people that come from an ICF facility, in most cases in a hospital setting, because they don't know what to anticipate, or if that person is on IV or different things like that, and they're constantly trying to pull the IV out, and so the hospital will have to restrain their arms down to the bed. That's a separate issue because that's a medical issue. We're talking about where we will restrain them just for the simple fact of a behavior. Bottom line, you're going to use your best judgment regarding health and safety. If it's a health and safety issue, you will have to intervene. Any other questions on that? Did that help in any way as far as answering your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the information that I have up here right now is information, again, that I've gotten from our survey team, but it's getting ready for your revisit. So anytime that you receive your 2567, how many days do you have to get it turned back in with your plan of correction?
60.
No, 60 is the number of days that you can do the actual correction.
Oh,
But
sorry.
10
the
days.
report, 10 days, yes, 10 days. So you have 10 days to write your plan of correction and get it sent back to the health department, but you have a maximum of 60 days to correct whatever deficient practice was on your survey. Now, in the event that it's something that's going to take a longer period of time than 60 days, you can call the health department and request for an extension just because of that need. Say it was something that needed to be repaired and you could not, you've shown where you've looked for that part, no one carries that part, there's a shortage of that part, and you won't get it for 6 months out. You would have to show surveyors where you tried diligently to obtain this piece and could not, so therefore they would honor that at that time, but you can ask for an extension if needed. Follow up on any issues that have developed while working on your plan of correction. Monitor to assure no new problems arise. So anytime there is a deficient practice, even though it may be identified for just one person, you want to go back and look at each person you serve to see if they're in the same arena with this person that received the deficient practice. So look at the whole scope of practice to make sure you don't have anyone else that could be deficient in that area. Be sure that your staff are aware of what you put in your 2567 as your correction. You should show where your staff were in service. Now, I've been in situations where the staff were in service multiple times, and when surveyors came for the plan of correction, they were not doing it the way they had been told or in service. And when the surveyors came back and asked me as the administrator, my point was, here's the documentation sheet where they were in service. So therefore, I've done my part. They were just negligent. So then my next step as an administrator would be disciplinary action, because once they've been in service on a correct method to do it and they choose not to, then we have to probably consider separating them from employment with us. Okay, be sure staff are aware of the revisit. Continue your room rounds by department head. So basically, if it's a maintenance issue, as the administrator, you want to go through and do rounds with the maintenance person. If it's dietary, who's over your dietary, you want to go in and make sure that they have the items needed to make the correction, but they're working on making those corrections. So you're pretty much monitoring them. And then go over your plan of correction with your core team so that each person knows what their responsibility is and that they have a deadline to get those things fixed and a written documentation sheet back to you or something solidifying that those things have been corrected. And it says be sure to review your plan of correction at your monthly QA meeting. And some people do their QA meetings. QA is quality assurance. So some people do theirs on a monthly basis, others do theirs on a quarterly basis. So it just depends. And this is how to write a plan of correction. So like I said, this is just helpful information. Basically, you have certain things that you have to answer on your survey for the plan of correction. Anytime you get your 2567, it's going to come with a letter that pretty much says, surveyors were at your facility on this date. Here are the things they found to be deficient, and you have so many days to get this turned back in. So as a facility, you're going to be looking at and trying to answer questions that how corrective action will be accomplished for those residents found to have been affected by this deficient practice. So that's the first issue. Okay. The second one, how the facility will identify other residents having the potential to be affected by the same deficient practice. And in most cases, I just put all of them could have been affected by that deficient practice. The next one, what measures will be put into place or what systematic changes will be made to ensure that deficient practice will not recur. The next one, how the facility will monitor its corrective action to ensure that deficient practice being corrected and will not recur. What program will be put into place to monitor the continued effectiveness? So in this case, let me give you a good example. Okay, so I recently had a survey right before this COVID, and the staff was using a big container of cleaning solution to prop the door open to the laundry area and to the supply area. First of all, that big container was chemicals. So therefore, in some of our cases, we cannot leave those things out. They have to be locked up for the simple fact we don't know if someone would try to drink it or something of that nature. So that was the first issue. The second issue was there's a big sign on the door that said, keep door locked, chemicals behind locked door. And it was propped open. So it had already been identified once to be an issue, or the note would not have been on the door. So me as the administrator, I'm going to re-in-service that staff again on the importance. And also I took the chemicals and put them under another locked door or cabinet so that they were locked up at all times, and basically reminded the staff that the note was there for a reason, and if they have to go in to get anything out, they do not need to prop the door open. And it's just a little lock that's there, but it has worked. But I go in periodically just to double check to make sure. And one of my comments was that I would have the QIDP or designee to do random walkthroughs of the house, making sure that these things are done. So they may have a checklist of different things that we have been deficient of that they have to go through and check off on a regular basis. And then that becomes our documentation for our plan of correction. So here it's talking about how will you correct the deficiency for the resident. In an immediate jeopardy situation, basically, if it's serious, the surveyors will not leave your facility until that action has been corrected to the point that they feel comfortable. And they could be there hours and hours just until you can get all your staff trained or in service on this deficient practice so that they know what to do to avoid that from happening again. Okay, what did you do to try to identify any other residents who may be affected? So again, reviewing their charts, talking to the person, getting their feedback, talking to the direct care staff, CNAs, getting their feedback and input. Also, for example, going back to the young person or the person that fell down the stairs. That's something that, again, you want everyone that's in your facility to be aware of, especially if they are facing dementia or Alzheimer's and have a history of wandering. I've seen some homes that also have alerts for visitors that come in, letting them know that, okay, be careful not to let anyone else walk out with you. And then you've got what systems will be put in place to correct the deficient practice, making sure that there is someone monitoring to make sure that this deficient practice is no longer happening. Okay, and this says that it does not exceed 45 days, but you have 45 days depending on the situation. In certain cases, if it's an immediate jeopardy, you may be given a shorter time to correct it, but you do have up to 60 days at this point. And this is just putting a credible allegation book together, so you can read this on your own. It's in your paperwork that Z sent you. Now, this is the incident report. Some of you may be familiar with this. Others may not have seen it before. Anytime there is an incident or injury that has taken place that needs to be reported, you have to fill out this information here. First of all, you're going to check one of these boxes. If it's the initial, combined, follow-up, or if it's the final. You have to do this within 24 hours of the incident. And then if this is not your final report and you have to do a follow-up, you have 5 days to get that in. So you're going to put the facility ID, the residents that were involved, and then what the situation was. So it's going to be certain injuries, utility failures more than 4 hours, misappropriation, allegations of abuse and neglect, so forth. In ICF, we have to follow the same guideline as in the nursing home. Also, we have to notify family, and in some cases, depending on the situation, if it is some type of abuse or neglect, unknown, and there are bruises or something of that nature, you may have to call law enforcement. Anytime there's misappropriation or abuse, rape, or anything of that nature, law enforcement have to be called out. And also, a lot of situations now, they're also requesting that we call adult protective services. And that is so that in the situation of a serious issue with the health department, they're limited on manpower, so they also want it being sent to adult protective services because they may be able to act faster than our actual surveyors to make sure that person is safe. You're going to give a description of the incident, include any relevant history, and then you're going to do your final report, but also making sure that you have corrective measures implemented and that you cover prevention so that it does not occur again. And then I've also included this little guideline. So basically it's showing you that if an incident has taken place, you follow this guideline here, and this will alert you whether or not it is important to fax over to the state as a reportable incident. So you have that one, and then you also have this one. This one is resident to resident. So you go through the little guidelines, answer the question, and basically, does the resident have the capacity to act willfully, knowingly, recklessly? If the answer is yes, is the unwanted or inappropriate behavior sexual? No. So then you would go over to the next one. So then you would be answering the question, is one or more of the following true? Was there physical injury? If yes, then you report. So that's how you utilize this diagram. And that if it's reportable, you must report. And I will advise you, once you fax it over to them, keep your cover sheet to attach to the front of your incident report. Because in most cases, if it's a reportable incident and you fail to report it and you don't have documentation that it's been sent in, it can become a deficient practice. And if it's multiple ones where there were unknown injuries that took place and you fail to report it, it could be an immediate jeopardy as well. Okay, this is something that should be hung up in your nursing facility or your ICF home, and this is your long-term care facility complaint procedure. So it goes through all the different things that if a person wants to file a complaint, it can be a resident, it can be a parent, anyone. And they would go through this technique to file a complaint. Okay. Back to our slide. So now we've covered all of that. This here is what I call regulation bingo. So based on the two sheets that I gave you for the W tag and the F tag. So whenever we're doing in-services with the staff, first of all, we want to key in on what we recently were cited on during a survey. So we're going to take those deficient practices and the tag numbers that go with them, and we're going to do training classes with the staff. As they become more familiarized with those, then we're going to play a game with it, and they can win prizes. They can win a day off, they could win money, different things like that. But they seem to do better when they know the regulations and what's expected of them. Because sometimes they feel that as an administrator or a director of nursing, we're just nagging, but that's not the case. So we want to equip them so that they understand it is a regulatory requirement. So once they get a bingo, and you can do different patterns when you do this. You don't have to do blackout. You can if you want to, or you can do it diagonally, straight, across, whatever floats your boat. But once they get the bingo, then you give them a prize, and you can either start all over or go to the next one. That's up to you. But they do have fun with it. And then you find them, especially if you're giving really good prizes, you will find them kind of studying together with one another just to understand, but you're equipping them. So it's very useful in that sense. Now I'm going to cover the difference between our QIDP and our setting. Okay, I'm trying to move this up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the tag W180 covers that a QIDP, they are the person that is designated as a human service professional. They must have at least a bachelor's degree in human services, but not limited to sociology, special education, rehabilitation, counseling, and psychology. Now, I can tell you for a fact, there aren't any classes out there or training out there that teaches a person how to be a QIDP. They can go to college to be a social worker or a special ed teacher, but it does not equip them to be a QIDP. So we're working on some processes to put some training classes together because you want them to be trained pretty much the same way so that clients' needs are being met, and we're covering all the bases for a survey. Anytime you're working in an ICF type situation and the Q is responsible for the resident, they are responsible for their active treatment, their daily ADLs, everything that is going on with that person, that QIDP needs to be aware. They're also your immediate contact with family. Now, in some cases, what I will do is if it's a medical issue, I still have the QIDP contact the family, but have the nurse or the director of nursing available to answer any medical questions that the family may have. Okay, so that's basically the definition or what the qualifications and requirements for the QIDP. Now, the difference between the administrator and the QIDP in this type of setting, solely the administrator is responsible for the total operation of the facility. Everything that goes on, they're responsible for. So again, going back to large facilities that have a CEO and an executive director, and you're just kind of like under that umbrella, you have to still maintain your facility. Now, in larger settings, you're going to have, say that it's an ICF that is a 100-bed facility. In that case, they're going to have 24-hour nursing. So if you have to move a person, sometimes you can move them to another ICF facility that does have nursing care 24 hours, depending on the severity of the issue. Okay, is everybody still there? I want to make sure I didn't lose anybody. Okay, also the administrator is responsible for working with all disciplines: the nursing, maintenance, housekeeping, dietary, direct care, everybody, ombudsman. They're also responsible for reviewing incident reports and signing off on your incident reports. It is required that anytime you do an incident report, the director of nursing and the administrator must sign off on it. And again, in the event that a major situation happens and no one informed the administrator, and survey comes out and gives you an immediate jeopardy because of it, and then they try to complain or send a complaint to the board about that administrator, in most cases, if that person was not aware, we can't hold anything against that person because they were not aware. But in that case, I would also go back and train the staff of the proper protocol, because we don't want it to feel like or seem like that we're trying to hide something or that we're not giving adequate care. So again, making sure immediately that administrator is aware of that incident. Also, any abuse or neglect, they have to interview and investigate that situation to see what's going on. Now, in the event that a staff member is doing harm to a person, you must immediately suspend that person pending your investigation. If it's a rape issue or a financial exploitation issue, you will also have to involve law enforcement. Injuries of unknown sources, you may have to involve law enforcement. And then also the administrator is responsible for the financial solvency of the facility, making sure we're not spending more than what we're bringing in, because you want to be able to keep those doors open. Also looking at if we're not able to be at 100% as far as our census and how many residents we have in the facility, then we have to go back and look at it. If we're not at full capacity, we may have to cut back on some positions or categorize them in another area so that we're not spending more than what we're bringing in, because we don't have the residents filling up those empty beds. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that. Also, looking at your vendors, your suppliers for food, for medical equipment. Are you getting it the cheapest possible? And in some cases with large corporations, or say you are a member of a Leading Age or a different provider group that is like an advocacy program for nursing homes or our type of facility, then in some cases you're able to get a discount. If everyone goes in and joins together, you're able to get a discount because they take in consideration whatever your quantity is, the next person's quantity, and they put them together so you're able to get them at a cheaper price. Okay, in this case, again, the QIDP is solely responsible for the active treatment program and the person. They also make sure that that person receives the services that are needed or interventions. In most cases, if we have people that constantly have outbursts and cannot control themselves and they're doing bodily harm to themselves or to other people, at some point in time, they may have to be inpatient for an assessment, and sometimes they come back doing wonderful. But if not, then that's where your staff want to document, your nurse wants to document, your social worker wants to document. Because if you ever have to discharge that person, you want the proper documentation to support what you have done to accommodate this person in their situation. Ensure that follow-up to recommendations for services and equipment or programs take place. If you have a dietary manager or a dietary consultant that reviews menus and diets and care of the person, and they make a recommendation, nursing needs to be aware of that if they need to go to the doctor for whatever reason, but also if there's a change in their diet they have to be aware because they may have to do some changes with certain things. So everyone needs to be aware that needs to know as far as the nursing, the staff in that situation. Another situation may be, say they need certain type of equipment to make them more independent during mealtime. The OT has come out and assessed them, but it's a matter of the physician writing the order for the equipment. So again, you're working together with the nurse, the staff, the doctor, and everyone in order to make this process go further and actually happen for the person. Here are some tags that are associated with the QIDB. You've got W159. If you're Q, you never want to get this tag because this is like the worst of the worst tag for a caseworker. And it's stating that if you get this tag, that your active treatment program was not in place or was not correct. There are certain goals that we have to implement every year when we're having the person's annual meeting, and we have to identify needs for that person. So we have to make sure that they have a goal on money management, on medication, on cooking, recreation. If they have behaviors, we have to have some written format of how to deal with that situation. And also if they go to vocational or outside employment, we have to address that. And then there has to be something that addresses their adaptive equipment. It could be caring for their eyeglasses, their hearing aid, their dentures, just something implemented. So again, in our case, we're training our staff and our residents to be more independent. So at some point in time in life, they may be able to move out and be on their own and take care of themselves. So that's our focus and our goal. We have been successful over the years in getting people out to the community living on their own. But we still want to strive for that on a daily basis. W249 is active treatment implemented. W460 is a nourishing and well-balanced diet. So where would the Q come in as far as W460? When we're talking about a nourishing and well-balanced diet, where would they come in? Does it seem like it's a nursing issue? Is everybody still out there?
It'd be the nutritionist, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry, say what?
It'd be the nutritionist.
You would need a nutritionist, but what would be the Q's role in this tag? You got
The Q
nursing,
is
you got
responsible
doctors.
for the Q is responsible for the care and making sure that everything is followed, and a dietitian is who writes the plan.
Okay, so the dietary person may make a recommendation, the nurse will follow up with the physician, but then once we get that order, the nursing staff can in-service the staff, but that person's plan still has to be amended to accommodate, say it's a new diagnosis. We have to add it to the diagnosis, but we also have to have something written in their formal plan that addresses that, what we're going to do for that person. Which leads us to the next one, W206. That's the individual disciplinary team meetings where we go through and decide what we're going to do for that person for the next year, what goals they're going to work on, what jobs they're going to do. If there's something that they want to do in life, say they want to go on a cruise, and we may work on, as far as their money management program, we may set out to do budgets and set aside so much money until they actually have raised enough money to go on their trip. So that's kind of the mindset that we work on now when we do our plan. It used to be that we taught people how to write their names, tie their shoes, and things like that. And it came to the point that for some of our people, they did not have the dexterity or something to absorb how to do those things. So we had to consider what is more meaningful for that person. Is tying their shoes more meaningful, or making money so that they could go out purchase personal items. And we found out that basically they really wanted to know how to manage their money so that they could go out to the community and make purchases or go out to eat and things like that. So we changed our thinking and made it more about what was important to that person. W436, furnishing them devices and specialized equipment. And then again, W96 is active treatment. So you've seen about 3 or 4 different ones that are basically on active treatment. So that's the biggest part when you're talking about the Q's role. It's active treatment. And right now we do have some people that are currently working out in the community, but for the ones that cannot, they're not able to go to our adult day programs and do recreational activities and so forth, so they're kind of at their houses. And we have cottages, so we have about 5 different places, and 16 in 3 of them and 8 in the other 2. So instead of them going to the day program, we brought some of the activities to their houses. And so they're working more on the cooking aspect of it, housekeeping, still keeping them very active so that they're not bored and getting into trouble most of the time. Also, the QIDP will integrate, coordinate, and monitor active treatment, observe for any changes with the person that's on their caseload. And it's very important that whatever we have as a training goal is documented on as the program is written, because we have to show on documentation whether or not this person is making progress. If they're not making progress, then it's the Q's responsibility to go back in and amend that plan. If we've got someone, as far as their cooking program, opening up cans, and maybe they need a special device, or their hands lock up when they try to use the equipment. So that may not be feasible for that person based on their disability. So we would regroup and come up with something else that we could work on. But we don't want it to just be ongoing if that person is not making any progress. And basically that's what the next one is revising their plan, and then making sure that staff are in service so that whatever way Johnny's doing it, Susie's doing it, Stacey's doing it, if we're all doing it the same way, chances are we will get positive results. But then it won't be so confusing to the person that we're caring for, because we don't have 5 or 6 different people coming to them with different procedures on how to do something. It may be sorting their clothes and doing their laundry, but everyone else has a different method for doing it. So we in-service our staff on the criteria and how they're supposed to go about implementing that training program, so everybody's on the same page. Okay. Also, the Q is responsible for how we actually implement the program. So we have to take it a step further. Everyone, say we have a 16-bed facility, either all men living in at home. So we have them grouped into group of 4s. So it may be 1 week, this particular group may do cooking, the next week they may do housekeeping. It rotates. So that QIDP has to go in and make sure they modify the program so that it doesn't conflict with something else that the person has going on or another group. Because we can't have too many people in the kitchen at one time, because it would be confusing. So even breaking down, say 1 group is in the kitchen cooking this week, we're not going to have everybody in the kitchen trying to cook. It may be 1 person's making the drink, 1 person's actually working with the staff and making the meal, the other one may have the responsibility of setting the table, but they're all learning different skills at different times and rotating them out. Also, you want to ensure that there are no discrepancies or conflicts. And I have done this many years, but I will do it just to make sure my staff are paying attention to what they're documenting. Because once they document, it becomes a legal paper that can prosecute them in a court of law if necessary. And if they're not documenting correctly, it could be a huge situation, especially in the event that someone dies. So with the Q's role, they have to go in and make sure that staff are documenting on a regular basis, that they're actually performing those skills. So periodically we may go to the house and say, I want you to demonstrate to me how you're working with Johnny on his money management goals. And if that person can't sit down and go through those steps, because in our case, we write out the steps for them. So all they have to do is read them and follow them. And in some cases, we can pinpoint which staff are not actually doing it the correct way. And in most cases, that's where we want to either retrain that staff, or again, it may be time for them to separate from the agency because they're not helping meet that need of that person. Now, say they are using those steps that we've given them, but we're not being successful. We will go back in and make necessary changes as needed. Okay, another thing the Q has responsibility is making sure that the person is aware of what their rights are. In our area, we have what's called a People First group, and it's run by a employee for Tulsa ARC, and they come in and have meetings, but the focus is teaching people with intellectual disabilities their rights, and then advocacy so that they can get needs met. We do have a lot of people that are higher functioning and able to access the community, live freely in the community with minimal support. So again, we want to equip them with everything that they need. Also making sure that everyone understands actions and behaviors. For example, if you are trying to find a person a job that has an issue with food, they hoard food, they love food, they're constantly stealing food, would it be okay to get them a job at Burger King or McDonald's or a food place, restaurant? Would that be okay? Did I lose you guys? I hear one person. Is that Julie?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did you say would it be appropriate for someone that hoards food to work in a restaurant? That's no.
Yeah. Okay, that is no. Because we don't, if they already have an issue that we're trying to correct, we don't want to put them in an environment that they're going to be tempted. It's kind of like putting a person that's alcoholic working at a bar. We don't want to put them in an area that's going to be temptation for them. So we're going to remove them or put them in another area that is most appropriate for that person. And then record progress notes at least monthly or as needed. Okay, you're getting keys. Okay, also the Q has the responsibility of adequate environmental supports and making sure the person has the adaptive equipment that is needed. They write the person's plan. They make sure they work together in congruent with the nursing department for any health issues. And they also write, in our case, they write the behavior plan to manage inappropriate client behavior. And they put safeguards in place and supervision. It may be that we have a person that is notorious for wandering off. So we may put that person on 15-minute checks. But anytime we do anything of that nature, it has to go before our Human Rights Committee to be reviewed. And they just look at it to make sure that we are acting in the best interest of the person that we're serving. Okay, I know I've kind of rambled on a lot and given you a lot of information. Do we have any questions? No questions? Okay, so I think we're going to sign out for right now for a break. So